So, Claire, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to me and my audience today. I'm very, very excited. And just to let everyone know about Claire, she is an education expert with over 15 years teaching experience, runner-up of the 2019 Empower Legacy Award, international best-selling author, and founder of Switched On, a cutting-edge global education platform offering inspirational education and parenting solutions. And Claire's website, if you want to find out more about her, is switchedonglobal.com. Thank you so much for being here. And before we launch in to our conversation today, I'd like to know about your international best-selling author. So tell me more about that. Is it to do with education? Is it something else?
Yeah, it's actually something else. I started off, I've written some of my own books. Thank you so much, by the way, Tamara, for being here. And hello, everybody. So I started off I wrote one of my own books, and then I collaborated with some other people talking about my journey, really. My chapter was called, Rising from the Ashes. It's like that kind of phoenix story. So that was in a book called Transforming Lives, Volume 2. And that was the book that got international best-selling status. So that was a collaboration with other coaches, other people who were sharing their inspirational stories to basically help people to battle on through and to know that there's, you can get through it and that you can recreate yourself anew, kind of thing. So it's that got me to international best-selling status. And then since then, I've collaborated on a mixture of things. I've written my own book. My first book was How to Have a Positive and Empowering Pregnancy. The second book that I wrote, I collaborated with young authors who I was teaching to write at the time, and that is called Lollipops and Rainbows, Teaching Literacy with Soul. So that is like a book that parents can use at home to inspire and motivate their young people to write. And then I've also collaborated on other books, Not Another Parenting Book, which is obviously a parenting book, A New Paradigm of Education Rising, which is a book written by educators for conscious education. So that was a really interesting book. I've also written some books which are to do with, emotional well-being and mental health and well-being. So there was a book that I wrote with, in fact, I've got another one coming out soon, but I'm going to, that's hush hush for a minute. But there's one which was called Hold On to Hope, which was to, again, help young people to literally hold on to hope and to navigate those dark times. So all sorts of things like that. You can actually find my Amazon my profile on Amazon. If you look for me, Clare Ford, Clare without the I, Ford without any on the end. So Clare Ford, and you'll see that there's a few different genres of books that I've been involved in or published myself.
How amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's incredible. I'm going to definitely look you up afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But today we are here to talk about the upcoming exams that many young people are going to be doing this summer, and maybe they're doing some now, maybe some mocks, I don't know. And Claire has some incredible tips that she is going to share with us. So these are tips that are going to help your teens, your students, and your families to navigate these upcoming exams. So I am going to say over to you, Claire.
Thank you. Yes, so this time of year, it can be quite tricky. There's a lot of pressure because subconsciously, even if we're not saying anything to our young people as teachers, as educators, as tutors, or as parents, we know that everything is geared towards the end of the academic year, right? Like that's when basically, the accountability falls in place. Like, what have you been doing all year? If you've been mucking around, you come out with not very much. And if you've been working hard, hopefully you come out with a bit more, right? So subconsciously, this is drilled into us as from when we were children, even in primary school, you have tests at the end of the summer, and then that works, from that, you get your school report, and then either your parents are happy with you or they're not, basically. So we know subconsciously, like, even if you're homeschooling, even if you're breaking out of this paradigm, even if you don't agree with testing, and that's certainly a conversation for another day, subconsciously, there is a lot of pressure. Everybody's got this pressure. And so it's really hard. It's not just about oh, let's have a conversation to see if they're okay. Like, it's about understanding that this, and we can maybe tap on this tomorrow afterwards, but this really is a deep imprint, this pressure to succeed at the end of the academic year. Even if you did well in December, nobody cares. That's done, right? How did you do at the end of the year? And so there's a lot of pressure. So just kind of holding space for that, first of all, and acknowledging that and going, actually, we're all under a lot of pressure. The teachers are under a lot of pressure. The heads of department are under a lot of pressure. The schools are under a lot of pressure because their exam results, rightly or wrongly, just give them their league tables, their place in the league tables. The place in the league tables is what parents look at to decide whether to send their child to those schools or not, right? When you're going around a new school, one of the first things you look at is, well, how well are students doing? I want my child to do well. So it's really bad. It's really, this system is so toxic. It's so toxic. And, these kids are pawns in this game of numbers. So all of that is not said out loud. I've said it out loud. Nobody says these things out loud, but I've just said it out loud. But you can feel the energy. This is not how I normally am, right? But you can feel the energy, this toxicity, this anxiety, this labeling, this defining of who you are because of this one grade that you get in the summer term, right? So that's what's going on in the kind of subconscious ether of people in education right now. So if we kind of park that, and hopefully we can get rid of some of that toxicity through tapping. At the end of the day, whether we agree with it or not, and I clearly don't agree with it, but whether we agree with it or not, we've got to get our kids through, right? That's the system they're in. Unless you're homeschooling, that's the system they're in the UK. So whatever school the child is in, they've got to get through the summer term and get through their tests. So let's look at then some ways that we can make that happen in a holistic way, in a practical way, that's not overwhelming for everybody, because everybody's already overwhelmed as it is. So we don't want to be adding more things to people's plates to do and to remember, and like, oh my God, now there's another thing to worry about, especially for mums. We're here from frazzled to fabulous, like we're already frazzled. We don't need more things to make us feel frazzled. We want to feel empowered to support our young people rather than drained by another thing to remember. So, I mean, that's another big kind of like holding space and compassion and understanding that as well, that you can only give what you can give. If some of the tips that I'm sharing or the things that we're going to talk through tomorrow, if that is too much for somebody, if that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, then don't do it. Don't add more to your plate, right? So that's also really important. I think often people ban around, could do this or the 5 steps to this, and now integrate this, now put this in your calendar, now put this. Well, oh my gosh, you're already doing enough. So let's take that on board as well, right? This feels heavy today. This energy today, talking about this. I don't know why, but I don't know why I'm starting off here, but I'm feeling this heaviness around this, and it's a lot. So hopefully by the end of our conversation, we'll shift this, right? So we've got these generational imprints, we've got societal expectations, we've got our own expectations as women for what it is that we can actually deliver and how to hold space for our young people. And of course, as I'm sure you talk about a lot in this group, it's about looking after self. It's about self-care before we show up for others, filling our cup before to overflow into the saucer, actually, before we give to others, putting on the gas mask first when the plane's going down, all those things, right? Let's assume, for the sake of this conversation, that the people who are listening now, who are in your group tomorrow, are already taking on board some of the self-care practices, tapping practices, the things that you've been suggesting to help them feel less frazzled and more fabulous. So let's assume that hopefully people have got a little bit more capacity to take on board some of these things. So is there anything you want to add, like before we go into some of the tips, or like what are some of your observations from what I'm like intuitively just bringing out right now?
I'm loving everything you're saying, and I'm just thinking about my own journey as a parent, because my daughter went to a Steiner school. I don't know if you've heard of that. So she did her GCSEs there, and then she moved to more of a kind of grammar type school for her A levels. And it was absolutely shocking to see the difference, because she studied in Steiner school because of her joy of studying. There weren't, I mean, apart from GCSEs, which obviously were exams, but they were held very lightly. And there was never, but then when she got to this pressurized A level school, it was just absolutely insane. It was a shock to her system. And I literally watched her expansive being shrunk and compressed. And it was almost like her life force was sucked out of her. It was like there was nothing left of her, and she became a robot. She became like a cardboard robot that was just getting up in the morning and revising and coming home and sleeping and coming home. And it luckily, like, you know, she's returned to her normal self. But for years after that, she wouldn't study. Like all the joy was sucked out of her. So that's my personal experience, and I find it quite tragic that this is normal.
It's really traumatic. I mean, I was talking to my son's friend the other day because she's going back to uni now. She's just on school holidays, and so universities is slightly different. So my son, for example, he has these things called open exams. But his friend Sophie, who's going back, she's doing psychology, and in her university, and she's Oxford Brookes, they are going back to the old way of doing exams, which is literally sitting in a hall on your one desk with your pen and your paper and the question paper. And she's like properly freaking out not because she can't do it, but through literally PTSD of going through that A-level system, of having to retain so much information. Now, what they're doing at my son's university, just as a bit of an aside, and I think that this is perhaps quite a good hybrid approach, is he does something called an open exam. I don't know if you've heard of this. I hadn't heard of it, but I think it's brilliant. And quite a few universities do this, where basically at the end of each module, or at the end of whenever they need to do their tests, their exams, they get given an exam that they get emailed the question. They can choose, I think they get a choice of like 4 questions and they have to choose 2. They're given the word count, and they're given 24 hours to submit it. And it's really interesting because they can type their answer. And of course, they all have equal access to all the answers to all the questions in the whole world. They can use ChatGPT, they can use Wikipedia, they can use any of their online resources, they can use all of their portals, they can use all the library links, they can do whatever they want. And everybody can do whatever they want to write this exam paper, which is like mind-blowing. And I said to Oscar, how brilliant is that? Because it really is a leveler of, like you said, really about your daughter enjoying learning. It's really a leveler of how you can apply your knowledge. It's not testing how much can you remember. Like if you haven't got a photographic memory, basically you're foobarred. If you can't remember, he's doing history, if you can't remember dates of things and names of people and names of places and the war of the this and the, you know, the 100 Years' War and the dates and who came over when and all of that. If you can't remember that, you're going to do badly in your exam. But if you can look that up and just go, oh yeah, that's right, I refer to that, then you know what you're talking about. You haven't got the fear of that, and you can move on and actually get to the real nitty gritty, the exciting bit of actually what is this question asking me. And so this old way of having to regurgitate information that you've had to just cram into your head. I mean, I don't know if you remember doing this, but I remember, Tamara, going into an exam, literally cramming, you know, I had to revise hard. I don't have a photographic memory. And literally 2 days later, I'd forgotten everything about that subject because I had to then fill my head with something else. Like, what is the point of that? What are we testing? If we're just testing regurgitation of facts through memorizing, Like, why are we putting all our young people under so much stress to do that when we've actually got the technology that can do that for us anyway? If they're going into the workplace and they need to have life skills that are going to add something and bring something new to the table, well, that is not it. So, you know, we're really battling against this. Kids are literally saying, why do I have to do this? And I, as an educator, say, I do not know. It is random as, right? But this open exam that they're doing at some universities, that I understand the point of, because everybody's got access to the lecture notes, everybody's got access to the presentations, everybody's got access to all the options to go into the seminars and have the conversations about it. You all know it's coming up. And so it really does put the onus on the individual to put in the effort to get out a result that's different from what other people are putting in. And I love that individuality approach to the exam in that way. So yeah, just wanted to kind of bring that in to sort of spice it up a bit. What do you think about that? Have you heard of these open exams before?
No, I haven't, and it sounds really, really good. And I have a bit of a confession to make, because in one of my exams, when I was at university, I was doing maths, and I decided I was just going to cheat, because I thought it was completely irrelevant if I could remember or not the formula. I needed to know how to apply it. So I wrote the formula on my pencil case, and then it was the application that was the skill, not like
Yes.
remembering. So I thought, I'm not going to remember this. I don't want to
Yeah.
remember it. I'm just going to write it down. And probably shouldn't be saying this to everyone. It was many years ago. I've got my degree now. But, it was just.
But that's the point. Exactly. That's the point.
Yeah.
And oh my God, there's simultaneous equations. I remember, and the quadratic formula. Oh my God. Like, I remember trying to teach people this and drawing pictures around it. And it's just, the world's mad. The world's gone mad. So I feel really sorry for these people who now have to go back. So our GCSE students, our A-level students, and some of our university students are going back to this rote. They do have to still do this rote learning. They do have to do this rote learning. So how do we get them through? Whether we agree with it or not, they're still trying to do it. So
Yes.
let's think, right, well, what can we do? So first of all, I think what we need to do is we need to check if our child is under stress. Some people actually love exams. I was more of an exam person than a coursework person, right? I hated doing all those bits of coursework during the year. It's like, no, let me just crack on with one thing. I'll put my energy in that and I'll come out with what I get. So some people actually don't mind exams. So that's also worth bearing in mind. Some people do better than they would do with drip feeding throughout the year, right? Because they can be really focused. They can gear themselves up for it. They can get themselves organized. They've got their systems in place. They can go in and nail it. So that could be your child, right? For parents who are listening now, that could be your child. So let's not also assume that, oh my God, just because it's exam season, they're totally stressed. Right, they might not be. But how do we know if they are? So here are some of the behavior. Before we go into the tips, let's check if your child even needs them. So if your child is not eating properly, or if they're overeating, comfort eating, that's something to bear in mind, right? They're coming down for meals, or they're skipping meals, or if they're coming in the kitchen all the time, right? Are they procrastinating? Are they comfort eating, right? Are they eating because they don't want to get on with their revision? Or are they not eating properly because their stomach is so churned up through stress that they literally can't hold down their food, right? So they might not be eating properly. So check their eating habits. Now, teens notoriously have not very good eating habits anyway with the junk food and stuff, but just check if there's a change to their normal eating habits, right? The same thing again is with not sleeping. Now, teenagers normally sleep a lot, not necessarily at the times you would want them to, right? But are they not sleeping? Like, are they literally up all night revising, or revising and then up the rest of the night gaming, or revising, being on Snapchat, social media and gaming, and then trying to get up the next day, and then the stress is stopping them from resting? So what do they look like? do they look like they're not sleeping? Are they not sleeping? Are they getting moody and irritable, right? So they're going to get snappier, tearful, more worried. Are they just flying off the handle at the simplest thing, like you telling them to pick up a sock or something? Is that causing door slamming and like crazy meltdowns? Because if that's more than what they usually do, that change in mood is also a symptom of stress, right? That's a symptom of stress in exam season. The opposite might be true. They might completely withdraw. Now, if you've already got, for example, sometimes boys can get very like in their cave, you know, men are from Mars and women are from Venus and all of that. Men need their man cave, and they can, teenage boys use their room for that, right? So if they're already quite withdrawn, you might not notice that as a symptom. But if they're generally quite chatty and happy to come down and chat to you and talk to your friends when they come over, or they're very sociable, and then suddenly they're withdrawing from their friends and family, they're just up in their room, that is massive. That's a massive red flag, you know, because they could be self-harming, they could be going down into a negative spiral. You need to keep your eye out for that. So any of these changes of their normal behavior, that's, you know, as a safeguarding officer, this is what we are trained on as well to look for. Of course, they may be totally avoiding revision. Now, that's not good because the exams are coming out whether they've revised or not. So avoidance, and you can probably talk into this a bit, Tamara, with the tapping, but any kind of avoidance, putting off, procrastination, that's not good. It needs to happen. It needs to happen. Unless they're particularly amazing, like one of my son's friends, she used to get like 98% in all her exams without doing any revision. like, like, you know, there are some people like that. That actually stressed her out though. I did some coaching with her because she was so confused, like, how can I be so brilliant without doing anything? She didn't feel worthy of the grade because she'd put no effort in. But that's a conversation for another day. So unless you're in like the top centile, your child's in the top centile of not having to do anything and just somehow by osmosis knowing everything, they're going to need to do revision. So if they're avoiding revision, you need to help them structure. We'll talk about some tips in a moment, like structure a time when they can do that. If you're just getting grunts from your kid, if they're avoiding communicating with you, that's not good, right? Now, again, it can be hard. Like, are they just grunting at you anyway? Right? Or do you normally have like a chatty, open person who like tells you all their stuff and now they're not talking to you? So what are these changes in behavior? If they're complaining a lot of headaches and stomach pains, now we know that, you know, sometimes people use those as an excuses to not go to things or whatever, but this can be stress. This can be stress because they're not eating properly, because they're not sleeping properly, because they're not staying hydrated, you know, and because they are feeling really nervous. And if they're even stopping going and doing the things that they used to enjoy, and this is a really big one. So you might have somebody who like always plays football on a Saturday or always goes to tennis club on a Thursday or something like that, right? Now, if they suddenly start saying, oh, no, I can't do that because I need to revise, but then they're not spending the time revising, they'd be better off going and doing those activities that they enjoyed, moving their bodies, being in a different environment, connecting with other people, taking their mind off their work. They might even be able to revise better because of doing those things. So those are some of the common signs. So has that helped, Tamara, before we kind of get into the tips? Is that useful?
Oh, that's so useful. I think that's brilliant. You know, I think what I'm really hearing is like really looking for changes in their usual behavior, and you know, whether it's with eating or withdrawal
Yeah.
or yeah. So I think that's fantastic. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So let's just go into some real good tips. So the first thing is to be less, you know, to be a bit more flexible about them doing their chores. Now I know it's really hard to get teenagers to do anything anyway. We can give them some slack, right? We can give them some slack if they're not bringing their plates and cups down, if they're not putting their stuff in the laundry bin, if they're not tidying their room or hoovering the floor, or whatever you expect them to do, you know, doing their own washing or whatever it is, mowing the lawn on the weekend. Just let it go. I would just say back off and let it go. It doesn't matter. The revision has to be at the top of their to-do list. So they've got all of the summer holidays to make up for the chores and the piles of clothes and all of that, right? So be flexible and give them a bit of a green card with that. The second thing I would suggest is to communicate with them, talk to them about their exam nerves and try to get to the bottom of what they're worried about. You know, by sharing a problem, we take away that shame around it, and we can perhaps give them then some support with establishing a timetable that might work for them, or making sure that we sit there when they're practicing a paper, even if it's just to give them our presence as a support. We probably haven't got a clue what the answers are. I mean, some of the things are really out there, right? Unless it's your specialism, you wouldn't be able to answer the papers. Can't really help them. But we could just sit there with them and create a more of an exam condition at home. So come down into the dining room and do a practice paper. Let's put the timer on, right? And let's sit here. I'll sit here in silence. You sit here in silence and do a practice paper. And that can be even like, oh, I can't do that. But you're actually helping them. You're helping them. You're foreshadowing what it's going to be like, right? And this will then take the worry out when they get there. So try to give them as well. So that's tip number 2. Try to not put extra pressure. Believe me, please, parents, teens know what they need to do. The teen, they know they want to do well. They want to do their best, right? So they don't need us adding on to that. Remember what I said at the very start of this conversation. It's in our psyche from the age of them being little. They know they have to do their best in this summer exam. So they don't necessarily want to dwell on the ones if they haven't gone that well. Let them move on, focus on the next one. When we say to them, how did you get on with physics today? Like, oh God, don't ask. Then don't ask. Go, well, never mind. There's a physics paper 3 coming up in a couple of weeks' time. That one might be better. And then just move on, because you can't change it. Once it's done, it's done. If they've sat there and all they've done is write their name, you can't change it, right? So it's done. You can retake it if you want to at a later date. Don't lose sleep over it all. Don't add this extra pressure. They're under so much pressure, to breaking points. And what we can do, stock the fridge with lots of healthy snacks. They're likely to want to go for the sugary drinks, the crisps, the chocolate, the energy drinks, which they think are sporty and healthy, which of course we know there aren't. And it means that their sugar levels go up and down like this, which is very difficult to maintain focus, very difficult to concentrate. So you're not doing them any favors by just putting their favorite snacks in the cupboard. You're better off having more fruit, bananas, easy things to grab, like the health food bars, which are like got some nuts and seeds in. Try to get rid of the white bread, the fizzy stuff, the sugar, because then they can have some grapes. I've got some grapes too, can have some grapes to snack on while they're working, things like that. They will get hungry, but try and feed their brains with the best brain food so that it can do the things it needs to do. And be the person who is fun to be around. Be the person who is fun to be around. Make sure you make time for them to do fun things. They're making time for themselves to do the revision and the hard things. Make time for them to do the fun things. Trip into town, a meal out midweek, which you might not normally have, making homemade pizzas together, trip to the pool, like whatever it is, walking, anything. It doesn't have to cost lots of money. It doesn't have to be a big, £100, £150, £200 spending spree. It can literally be free. I remember very quickly when I asked my son one summer holiday what was the thing that he'd loved most about the summer holidays. And we'd done all the trips to London and seeing granny and seeing friends and going abroad and all the stuff. And I was like, I'm patting myself on the back. I've given my sons a lovely summer holiday. I'm like, right, what's the favourite thing? And he said, to be honest, Mum, he said it was going to Sissinghurst Castle, which is down the road from us, literally 10 minutes away, with a picnic and sitting by the lake and doing that. And I was like, oh my God, I've planned all these things. I spent all this money. And that was his favorite thing. And I thought about that and I thought, how blessed, what a gift. But what he was really saying was that his favorite thing was just simply having quality time with me. That was his favourite thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as parents, we don't need to do the big gestures and all of that. We just need to map out and talk to them and say, right, when do you think you'll be finished your revision today? And they say such and such on time. Well, I tell you what, why don't we go out, for a pizza, from between 5 and 7? Would that work for you so that you've got time to come back and do stuff in the evening? And they say, oh yes, and then don't talk about the exams, just have fun. Reminisce over old times, whatever it is. So
well, I tell you what we used to do in my daughter's A-level year, and I felt like it's a combination of supporting them and also like having fun in a way. But the thing that I was committed to doing, because she really enjoyed doing this, is getting up in the morning really early and going for a walk before school, before like I took her or she got left or something, and we'd just walk in the fields, and it's kind of like it. No, we probably didn't do the whole walk because there wasn't time, but we'd walk for about, I don't know, whatever time we had, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And it was a really lovely kind of grounding way. And that's something that we learned in Steiner. They always said walk before you go to school so that you can get into your body. And I remember the day of her first exam, it was really funny. So we did our whole walk, which is kind of more of a half an hour walk. And when we got to the top of the hill, which is our favourite part of the walk, she had, unbeknown to me, brought our speaker with us, and she had brought her phone and attached, the phone to the Bluetooth of this big speaker. And she blasted out the song Simply the Best. And we literally ran and skipped down the hill, singing at the top of our voices, Simply the Best before her. And she was in such a high vibe before she went in that she that's what she brought to the exam. And it was very moving and touching and inspiring. So I don't know if that helps anyone else. I know a lot of people don't like getting up early, but I'm lucky that she did.
Grounding, embodiment, raising your vibe, like all of these things, totally will massively help, for sure. And even if it's afterwards, going for what and shake it, and then you're shaking. So you did it first, which is good to raise the vibe, to get in there, to be in the right mindset. But also thinking about that at the end of the day, after a really difficult day, had all the chatter with your friends, like getting out of that toxic environment and then shaking out all that toxicity before, emptying your mind in order to start again. So both ways is really important. Yeah, I love that.
So we've got, oh God, I can't even read my writing. I was writing, like be kind to them, no chores, keep the communication going, no extra pressure, put healthy snacks in the fridge, bring fun into your day or your itinerary, and the fifth one.
Yes, so it was being flexible about the chores, communicating with them about what they're worried about, not adding any extra pressure.
Oh,
So
no.
it's avoiding that kind of criticism as well, like, and even if it is like, oh, you're good at this subject, like, oh, that'd be like, oh my God, now I've really got to get the level 9. Right? So even the sort of like smallest comment that sometimes we make unknowingly, like, oh, you'll be fine, this is your best subject. Oh, that can really add a lot of pressure, right? So it's hard. It's about being really aware of what we're saying. Yeah.
Great. So, should we do some tapping? Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we do a little bit
No,
of tapping?
that was it. That's fine. Yeah, we can do some tapping if you think it would be useful.
I think that was absolutely fabulous. Such a brilliant, sensible list of things that are easily implemented. They're not rocket science, and they're all really doable. So you mentioned at the beginning about this incredible pressure that we feel as ourselves, and then we kind of pass it on to our children. So kind of like the societal expectations, and this is like been the expectation on that they've been exposed to, but we've been exposed to as well. So are you suggesting that the tapping that we do for the parents, or on kind of releasing some of our own expectations, is that the way you saw it, or did you see it on the students?
I don't mind. I mean, that's your area of expertise, but I'm just saying that, that is a big, heavy burden on our shoulders, isn't it? That it's a subconscious thing.
Yeah.
And actually, if we did badly at school, so to speak, we might be vicariously living for our children, wanting to give them opportunities that we didn't have so that they do better and fly, so there's that. If we did really well, if we're very academic and we've really achieved and perhaps been, the first generation to go to university or whatever, then there's those expectations as well. Well, I've done it, why can't you? Right? So yeah, I think for us as parents, it's about understanding that we need to see the person who's in front of us for who they are, for the gifts and talents that they're bringing to the world, and not put our expectations on their shoulders.
Great, thank you. So if you're watching this, I invite you to think about the expectations that you are feeling on your child. And sometimes they're things that we can dismiss, I believe, because it's like, of course I don't expect it. I just want them to do their best. But actually, if you kind of like have a very honest conversation with yourself, and you don't have to share this with anyone, think about how it feels. Think about how it would feel if your child didn't do well, and how that would make you feel, so that you can really tune into that feeling of like, I really want them to do well. And it can bring up difficult feelings that we don't want to acknowledge. It could bring up feelings of, well, I'm ashamed, which we don't want to be feeling, but sometimes it can be there. Or it could be feelings of disappointment, and again, we don't want to bring that disappointment into our relationship with our child. Or like you said, it could trigger our own childhood of like, well, I didn't do well, I really want to protect them from the feelings I had. So thinking about those, and with the theme of expectation, and tuning into where you feel that in your body, and what the body sensation is. And if you had to rate the intensity of that feeling, and you don't have to tell anyone, just tell yourself, rate that feeling on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being most intense, 0 being calm, light, and peaceful. And if you've never done EFT tapping before, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It's like acupuncture for emotions without the use of needles. And the invitation is simply to do what I do and say what I say. And if you don't want to join in, that's absolutely fine. But if you do join in, you agree to take responsibility for your own well-being. So Claire, would you be willing to be my echo? So just repeating what the mum or dad would be saying. Is that okay?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we're going to come to tapping on the side of the hand, and it's either side, either hand. It doesn't really matter. And just saying after me, even though I have all these expectations on my child,
I have all these expectations on my child,
and it's hard for me to even admit to myself.
And it's hard for me to even admit to myself.
There's so much expectation from society.
There's so much expectation from society.
And there's part of me that is concerned.
And there's part of me that's concerned
about what other people might think.
About what other people might think.
If my child doesn't do well.
If my child doesn't do well.
And so inadvertently, I'm putting a lot of pressure on them.
Inadvertently, I'm putting a lot of pressure on them.
And I don't mean to.
I don't mean to.
Because I genuinely want the best for them.
Because I genuinely want the best for them.
But I also really want them to do well, or okay, or whatever feels right for you to say.
But I also really want them to do okay.
And I acknowledge how that makes me feel.
And I acknowledge how that makes me feel.
And let's come to top of the head now. Again, either hand is fine. All of this expectation.
All of this expectation.
And beginning of the eyebrow. All of these feelings I have.
All of these feelings I have.
Side of the eye. All of this attachment that I have to them doing well.
All of this attachment that I have to them doing well.
under the eye. And maybe I didn't do well.
Maybe I didn't do well.
And I just don't want them to go through what I went through.
And I just don't want them to go through what I went through.
And maybe there's an expectation.
And maybe there's an expectation.
Because all the people in our family do well.
Because all the people in our family do well.
All the people in our family go to Oxford.
All the people in our family go to Oxford.
I have had that kind of, seen that pattern and that pressure that puts on them. And I acknowledge how I feel.
And I acknowledge how I feel.
And I really don't want to pressurize them any more than they already are.
And I really don't want to pressurize them any more than they already are.
And yet there is this feeling inside me.
And yet there is this feeling inside me.
I don't want to be disappointed.
I don't want to be disappointed.
And I don't want to feel embarrassed.
And I don't want to feel embarrassed.
Or ashamed.
Or ashamed. Or
around other people, or a failure.
Yeah.
Around other people. And I'm noticing where I feel these feelings in my body.
And I'm noticing where I feel these feelings in my body.
And as you tap under the nose, just take a deep breath into that part of your body. And on the chin point, it's okay to acknowledge these feelings.
It's okay to acknowledge these feelings.
They're only emotions.
They're only emotions.
Emotions are energy.
Emotions are energy.
And energy can move.
And energy can move.
And you might have resistance to thinking that thought that, energy can move and emotions are energy, but just hold that with curiosity and quite lightly. And on the side of the eye. So I'm breathing in trust into that part of my body.
So I'm breathing in trust into that part of my body.
And as you tap under the eye, take a deep breath in. And on the nose, under the nose. And if there was a healing colour that you could breathe into that part of your body, imagine what that colour might be. And if you don't know, just make it up. Just make up a healing colour. And as you tap on the chin point, breathe that healing colour into your body. And on the collarbone point, softening, allowing. And under the arm, a little bit of relaxation. And on the top of the head, into that part of my body. And breathe that in now. Knowing and trusting on the eyebrow that my child is doing the best they can.
Knowing and trusting that my child is doing the best they can.
With the resources they have right now.
With the resources they have right now.
And I'm doing the best I can.
And I'm doing the best I can.
With the resources I have right now.
With the resources I have right now.
So I'm open to the possibility.
So I'm open to the possibility.
Of relaxing a little bit more.
Of relaxing a little bit more.
And holding the possibility.
And holding the possibility.
For the highest and best outcome.
For the highest and best outcome.
For all of us as a family.
For all of us as a family.
And as I've been tapping, is there anything, Claire, that kind of comes to mind that you think would be useful to add for parents?
No, I think it's lovely, that trust and surrender for the best outcome, and also knowing that our young people are resourceful and they are resilient and that they will get through it.
That's so beautiful.
Hmm.
My child is resourceful.
My child is resourceful.
Trusting that my child is resilient.
Trusting that my child is resilient.
And knowing that they will and can get through.
And knowing that they will and can get through.
And put your hands on your heart chakra, centre of the chest. Say transform, take a deep breath. So I invite you to rate your feelings around expectations now, again on a scale from 0 to 10, and just see if anything's changed. And it would be really nice if you wanted to type in the chat how that was for you, if you've got any questions, if you've got any questions for me, if you've got any questions for Claire, then I'm sure we can answer them afterwards. So the idea is that the intensity will have gone down. If it's stayed the same or gone up, well, if it's gone up, just repeat the tapping. If it's stayed the same, try repeating the tapping again. If it still hasn't changed, there are a lot of things that one can do within EFT, but they're beyond what we can say on this video. Do reach out to me and I can give you some more tips. And so, Claire, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No, thank you so much. And that was brilliant, Tamara. And I love how we've moved through that sticky energy that I started the session with. And I don't know why it was, but I think it's just empathically tuning into how people were feeling. And definitely, I know I'm feeling a lot better having this conversation and feeling empowered and inspired that I can do something about this. I can support my child, and ultimately it's all part of their journey through life. And just seeing it from that bigger perspective is really good. So yes, if anybody wants to reach out to me, my DMs are open. I'm happy to have a conversation, with people at this stage just to get them unstuck and help prepare them. So yeah, and thank you so much, Tamara, for the opportunity of discussing that here with you.
Thank you so much, Claire. You've brought so much wisdom and I really, really appreciate it. And if you want to reach out to Claire, her website's switchedonglobal.com, and you can find the link in the description as well. So thank you. Have an amazing day, everyone. Bye.
Take care.